What would you say the number one thing that an LO, let's say, level 2 LO, needs to
Sure.
do in 2022? What's the first thing that they should be focusing on?
Um, Figuring out how they're going to steal market share. And so, because if you're going to do the same, I mean, it depends on what their goals are, right? But let's assume they want to at least do the same amount of business they did last year. You're going to have to steal market share because there's going to be less business to go around. And most of the time that comes down to either more, better prospecting, right? And so depending on the level 2 loan officer and how they're running their business, it'll be listen, all of this comes down to doing the 10 to 12 hours a week of important but non-urgent prospecting activity first. Because if you do it second, it just doesn't happen. If you do it third, it definitely never happens. And so if you got to do that time in your calendar first, and then you'll adjust everything else around that, the answers become very obvious. And, I've had the opportunity in my career now to work with guys who do hundreds of millions of dollars in volume and guys who can't find their way to $10 million a year in volume. And those problems are the same. The strategy for fixing them changes. But we're going to be in a year here where people are going to need to either have more referral partners, more leads coming in, more marketing, more opportunity per total loan in the market being done, or they're going to go backwards. And I was recently looking at some data from 2019, and man, a lot of these loan officers that look like heroes over the last 2 years looked really normal back then. And if people think they're going to be able to operate in the same way and get a different result, they're probably mistaken. I think a lot of people's 2022s may end up looking like a lot of people's 2019s.
Except that in 2019, they were probably stoked to hit where they hit, right? So there's this mental thing of sliding backwards always feels worse. So what would you say to an LO who, is doing the right things and putting in the work and is good at what they do, but they find themselves sliding backwards? Like, do you have words of advice, encouragement, a pep talk? This is your chance to stand on a milk crate and really put on your Lombardi hat and go all in. So it's up to you.
So it's hard for me to give general advice. And I'll say that because, everything that we do here and kind of how I operate and when I'm coaching is so much about what that person wants for their life. I think there are plenty of loan officers that don't need to make the money they made the last 2 years, that probably didn't have the balance in their lives that they wanted over that time period. And maybe sliding backwards 10 or 15%, if the market goes back 30%, finding some balance in their life, figuring out what they're going to do with their money and their investments. Maybe that leads to a more well-rounded happiness. Right? Because that's, and when I say happiness, I don't mean like the feeling of being happy. I mean, really finding joy in your life and your work and finding that you're feeling like you're in the right place at the right time. And so, there are certain people that I think may slide backwards and be perfectly fine with it. I think there are a lot of loan officers that crushed the last 2 years and were still miserable. Having said that, assuming, natural, rational thought process of which is that more is better, right? And I understand that, then I don't think it's going to be particularly difficult to get motivated, especially if you're the kind of person that can see reality and get afraid, right? And so, for me, I like to have control over my life and my work, and I don't want to slide backwards. So if I look at my market from last year and look at where all my loans came from, and I realize that if I don't add new sources, I'm going to slide backwards. Well, then that should be a fear that motivates me to go out there and start finding those new sources, those new relationships, those new whatever it's going to take. So, it'd be easier to have this conversation if it was like such an obvious more is better. If I was teaching people how to be Olympic sprinters and the answer is you win gold or you lose, it's like very cool. Like you better do this. But we are in a strange industry in that loan officers are making a lot of money. There are a lot of loan officers that are above average, but certainly not exceptional last year, that finished in the top 1% of income earners nationally. And then, a lot of them are going to figure out, is that their end game, or is there something else for them, in terms of what that goes for? So I know I'm not answering your question, but I'm in the midst of interviewing and meeting so many different people who are going through this stuff right now. And for every person that is like, I did X and I want more, of which, by the way, I love working with those people and it's amazing they're inspiring. I'm working with just as many people who are like, I don't know. And that to me is scarier, because, floating, is where people, I think, become unhappy.
And to take what you're saying too, really what I'm hearing you say is that it just depends on what you want out of life. And one of the best things about starting your own business or working for yourself is getting to make that decision, right, in a very, very targeted way for you, for what your life looks like. I have a friend who it was always a surfer, always a good surfer. And then right out of high school, it was like, whoa, he's like competing, like he's a big surfer. And then that kind of, I stopped hearing about that. And he's like perfectly happy right now working at, like, he like owns a little food truck. He lives in like a van near it and he surfs whenever he wants, sometimes all day. Then he gets out and makes food and people come because they know his food is good. And then he goes and surfs. And there are some people that have anxiety hearing what I'm saying right now, right? That the idea of, flying by the seat of your pants, living in a tiny little space, kind of going, whatever, that freaks them out. And they've been conditioned to think, no, more is better. Well, you have other people who I think you and I might be on the same page based on your face, who are kind of like, well, that sounds kind of good right now.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I knew at a very young age what I wanted my life to look like, right or wrong. I'm not even saying I have anything right. I'm just saying very specifically, I was like, wow, I want to have a family. I want to have kids. I want to live in a neighborhood where my kids play with other people's kids. I want to be able to provide for those children and give them a life that was even better than the one that I had, which, by the way, was amazing growing up. I'm very fortunate. And so, that set me on a very specific path of achievement that was going to lead to those results. And surfing and food trucks were probably out for me when it came to that. And right. By the way, man, when I'm not like a skier and when I'm into more traditional sports that involve a ball, but I'm in the extreme sports, I'm much less inclined for it. But I've always been so jealous of the people that are into it, right? Because they are cooler than I am, and they certainly look like they're having more fun. But I got put on rollerblades and I was scared. It's just skateboard me too, right? So wasn't wired the same way for that. So yeah, to your point, we're all driven by different things. And what we try to do here more than anything is bring self-awareness, not just to what the goal is, but in terms of, being very conscious about the decisions that we're making on the way to help us get there.
I was able to ride a skateboard one time. I worked at it. I borrowed my friends and I was able to, push and ride and push again, which in my mind, you are now skateboarding, right? You can propel yourself. And I fell. I skinned up my knee and I made a mistake. I did not get back on. It was dark. I went inside. I got cleaned up. Now it's time for dinner, blah, blah, blah. Never rode one again.
Are you sure that was a mistake?
Maybe not. Yeah.
Maybe getting back on the skateboard would have resulted in serious head injury, And so I tend to think that, I don't think my limitations around some of those things were imagined. I think some of them were real. I think I have short legs and a long upper body, and I'm not built for those sports. So,
very good point. Well, you put a piece of me at ease from a long time ago. This has been therapy sessions with Mark and Dan.